It said no trans fat, no artificial preservatives, and baked with real cheese. No artificial preservatives.
Interesting. So, you know, labels can be, I don't want to use the word misleading, but there are definitely, I think there's jargon that manufacturers use to market the product as healthier than it could be or healthier than it is. So for example, if a label says like made with whole grains, this implies that it's 100% of grains are whole grains. That's not what the goldfish say, but like what it really means is that the recipe includes like a bit of whole grains added to many refined grains, and that's the enriched flour that's listed in the ingredients. So made with whole grains is technically true, but it only needs to contain a certain amount, like a small amount of whole grains, and the rest of the grains could be refined grains. So you want to, as often as possible, look for products labeled 100% whole grains. That means the entire, all of the flour or all of the grains in the product are whole grains, not just a portion of it. So, and then a variety of this also commonly found in children's foods are like made with real fruit. So there could just be like a little bit of fruit extract of real fruit in there, but it doesn't mean that the entire, like a gummy is real fruit. So labels could be misleading sometimes. So if you're looking at the grains, you want to make a healthier choice, I would say 100% whole grains is a better option. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll definitely look for that. Yeah, I was surprised when I looked into it and I was all the different oils and all the different things. I'd like to try and find different foods that like with labels are like they do the commercials like, you know, where, oh, I can't pronounce this. Like there's this little girl who's reading the thing. You're like, we try and stick to that, but some of these feel like childhood staples, but at the same time, yeah, I'm looking at it and it doesn't look like it's that healthy.
Yeah.
What's the serving size, Kate?
It says 55 pieces.
Okay. That's a good amount. I would say that's like half a cup. That's a good amount.
So it's about 30 grams or 55 pieces.
Okay. We'll go more into detail about what the serving size means. And so if you want to keep your label close by, it'll be a nice reference for you to like refer back to it while I'm just explaining different parts of the label in a little bit. Gary, do you have a label that you want to share with us?
This is Trader Joe's peanut butter spread.
Okay.
And I'm trying to keep it with taking protein first thing in the morning. So you want me to just read the ingredients first?
Yeah, go for it.
Roasted peanuts, powdered sugar, parentheses, cane sugar, cornstarch, close parentheses, palm oil, sea salt. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Contains peanuts.
So you see this a lot with the nut butters where they're adding sugar or they're adding oil to these nut butters. And my recommendation for the nut butters like peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, sunflower butter, you want to look for as few ingredients as possible, mostly just what I would recommend is ingredients should just be like peanuts. In Trader Joe's, I have this in my slides. We'll see this in a few slides. Trader Joe's has peanut butter. And the reason why I put it in my slides is because they have two varieties of the same peanut butter. It's a crunchy peanut butter. One is salted and one is unsalted. So my recommendation would be to go for the peanut butter or nut butter that's a single ingredient with no added sugars, preferably no added palm oil or other types of oils. These are all stabilizers that kind of make the product more shelf stable in the long run. But for our health, we want to try to avoid the added sugars, especially because you're essentially eating the same food. It's just you have the one that's a little bit more processed and will probably be a little bit more shelf stable. But there are nut butters that are single ingredient nut butters, and those are the best options, I would say, especially the no salt added option.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, enjoy your peanut butter. Peanut butter is a great option. We talked about it last week. Peanuts have really high protein content. They're technically a legume, but really effective way to add protein in the mornings, especially if you're on the go. It's fast, and I think it's pretty tasty. So great option.
Quick question. Should you just be having a teaspoon or a tablespoon of the peanut butter without bread or anything?
Well, no, I don't think that is like going to satisfy your, is that enough to fill you up for for a while? Like the portion
For a
size that I'm
quick
looking at
ride?
is 2 tablespoons, right? If the portion size I'm looking at right now is 2 tablespoons, has 180 calories. So what is the serving that you have usually? What's the serving size you
It's about a tablespoon. It's a heaping teaspoon.
have? Yeah. So,
Are
Dr.
you doing?
Lissagor, how would you answer that? Like, is that enough to just to have the peanut butter alone? Dr. Lissagor?
Yes,
Are you?
sorry, I was unmuted. If a person is looking more toward vegetarian meals, if a peanut is not a complete protein, so if you put it on bread, that's got some amino acids that help it to be a complete protein. It's not like Americans don't get enough protein, but yeah, you can have 2 tablespoons of it. You don't need to put it on bread. You can put it on apples. That tastes really good.
Banana?
Banana is good too. Yeah, and you look at that balance of it, and yes.
Yeah.
Are you doing that before your run or your walk? Is that your intention?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to get in before that, but not too much because you don't want to get it in. You don't want to hurt the digestive system.
Going back on what Dr. Lissagor said in her talk from before, balance, variety, moderation. Variety, I think, is key to satiation, and having those different flavors. If adding an apple or celery, I think will help in the long run of keeping you fuller. And I think mentally, not just your stomach fuller, just satiating that hunger so that we're not snacking often or trying to, that's kind of.
I'd also chime in that if you're doing it prior to your exercise, part of the reason is you're wanting to fuel that as well. Your exercise is moderate right now, and so I think the banana, the fruit, or the bread gives you some of that glucose, some of the carbohydrate that you need, particularly in the morning if this is first thing you're eating. So it gives you a little bit of that, and then the peanut butter will last for the duration because it's got the fats and the proteins in it. So it's kind of like trail mix, that idea behind trail mix, a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, so that you're fueling the whole activity, but yet not consuming huge amounts of calories. Keep in mind your walk you're going 3 miles, which is, you've got some hills in there, so it's about 300 calories for that walk. So like Sahar said, the calorie amount for that couple of teaspoons, you're calorically hitting about break even, and so you can look at the serving amount that way as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your labels. We can go a little bit more into what the different parts of the label mean, how to read food labels and what to look for. I see that Molly has joined us. Hi, Molly. You're on mute. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. I was at my Tai Chi class.
Oh, how was your class? Was it a nice class?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Oh, good. So we're discussing food labels this week. I wanted to know, before I kind of get started on the different parts of this food label, if you brought something you want to share with us, or you can think about, a food that you'd like to share, and we can come back to you at the end as well. Is there something you have?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if something comes to mind and you want to grab it during our discussion and kind of share with us at the end, that would work too.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we can go on to the next slide and take a look at the different parts of the food label. So what we have here is the updated food label, and we'll talk about what's new on this one. But first thing we want to look at is the serving size. And why this is important is because you want to know what the amount of food is that this label is referring to. So the serving size on this food label is 2/3 of a cup. And that would mean, and then the next thing we're going to look at is the number of servings for the entire package or container of food. So if you were to, in theory, multiply the serving size by the number of servings, you would know the nutrition facts for the entire package. So why this matters is because this serving size is not for the entire package necessarily. It's just for a certain amount of food in that package or container. And I know this makes, it's very obvious for something like, a teaspoon of peanut butter. But when you're looking, for example, at a process, like I've seen like Oreos, for example, and the serving size will be like 4 Oreos, but the package contains 8. So that nutrition label is only for 4 Oreos, not the entire package. So it's important to know what your serving size is and how many servings there are per container. The next thing you want to look at is the carbohydrate count, and under that, in addition to the new food label, is the grams of added sugars. Why this matters is because there are foods like the peanut butter that Gary mentioned that they've added sugar to. And so we want this where it says includes X amount of grams of added sugars to be as minimal as possible. That'll help us more effectively work towards our goals of weight loss. I feel like the more added sugar a food has, probably going to slow down our progress. So we want to have as few added sugars as possible. Additional nutrients that you can find on the food label are the amounts of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And when comparing food labels, we want to aim to find foods that have, when we're comparing two foods, if they're similar, and we'll go into more detail later in the presentation, but when comparing two similar foods, we want to choose the one that has generally lower amounts of calories, less saturated fat, less sodium, and less added sugars. And we want to avoid trans fat, and trans fat is also listed on the label as well. So if we go to the next slide, you might see food labels that are different than the ones that I'm showing here, and that's because the food label was recently updated. And manufacturers that have more annual sales, I'm not going to give exact numbers, but those manufacturers were required to update their food label by January 1st, 2020. Manufacturers with fewer sales have until January 2021 to change their food label. So you might see small variations in the food label, but pretty much it'll look similar to what you see here. Is anyone interested in what's been updated? Or does anyone have any questions about the food label?
I did have a question. I was reading that serving sizes were updated based on how much we're actually eating versus how much we need to eat. I'm not sure why that was.
I think so people have a better understanding of what the actual calorie intake is that they're consuming, because again, like going back to the, I don't want to use the Oreo example, but that's just the first thing that's coming to mind. Going back to that example, let's say most individuals consume the entire package of Oreos, which is 8 Oreos, but the serving size on the label was 4. I think that's a bit deceiving, because if most people are consuming 8, The food label should reflect the amount of calories that most people are consuming. Now you have,
Got it.
you know, you can do the math and only have 4 and cut the nutrition facts in half. But at the end of the day, if everyone's having 8, but that nutrition label only indicates the nutrition information for 4, I think that's a bit confusing for people, and they think they're having fewer calories than they actually are having. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I was thinking it in the scope of like the serving size is like the recommended size at what we should be eating, and which
Yeah,
it
no,
is, but now it's changed because people are just intuitively, they see a bag of chips, I'm going to eat the whole bag of chips rather than
right.
let me see if this is a third, so I'm going to eat about this way down and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
So what it says here is servings per container and serving size information are in larger, bolder fonts. Serving sizes have been updated to better reflect the amount people typically eat and drink in a day. However, the serving size is not a recommendation of how much to eat. So it's not saying like just because the serving size says 8, you know, this label is for 8, you should eat 8. No, you should, you know, if you should have the portion that will fill you up and satisfy you and is the amount that you want to eat. You don't need to, you know, eat the whole thing. Calories are displayed in a larger, bolder font to make the information easier to find and use. Let's see. Added sugars, vitamin D, and potassium are now listed. I love that they're including the amount of added sugars in the labels, because I feel like, again, you want to know if the sugars found in the food are part of the food or if they're added sugars. Great example is the peanut butter. You know, there are a lot of peanut butters that are, you know, when you look at the ingredients list, all it lists is peanuts, you know, and that's what you really want to go for. When you see a product that has added sugar or added fats, we want to choose the option that has fewer ingredients and fewer preservatives in it. Let's see what the chats are saying. Say something. Here we go. The funny thing is that most people assume that a serving size is the whole package, right? Most people underestimate the calories per day by 1,000 calories, but overestimate the amount they exercise in a day. That's a recipe for weight gain. Yeah, it is. I'm just going to turn right here. Okay, did anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay, we can keep on moving forward. We talked about serving sizes. Here we go. Does anyone have any questions on the serving sizes on the food label? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so we can go over to the next slide. So we're looking at what's different parts, what's in food. So we all know that there's carbohydrates, protein, fats, and fiber. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate listed under the carbohydrate portion of the food label. Carbohydrates are any food made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, barley, or other cereal grains, which are grain products. Proteins we are familiar with, we've talked about. One thing we want to look for on food labels for proteins is the amount of salt that is found in these foods. Salt is added to many canned foods, including beans and meats, which are part of the protein group. And many processed meats, such as ham, sausage, and hot dogs, are high in sodium. So we really want to take a look at the sodium content in our food. When we're looking at the fats portion of the food label, we want to reduce the amount of trans and saturated fats that we're having. And saturated fats are generally found, just a second, sorry. So yeah, we want to limit the amount of saturated and trans fats in our foods. Fiber. Dietary fiber is a type of a carbohydrate. It's naturally occurring in different types of foods such as beans and peas, fruits, nuts, seeds, vegetables, wheat bran, and whole grains are all great sources of fibers. Fiber can also help lower blood cholesterol levels. So if it's something that you are dealing with high cholesterol levels, introducing higher foods that have higher amounts of fiber can potentially help lower your blood cholesterol levels. There are also food additives, phytonutrients, salt and sodium, vitamins and minerals often added to foods. If we go on to the next slide. So a little bit about food additives. There are ultra processed foods that we really want to try to avoid. These ultra processed foods, and diets that are high in these types of foods do really contain a lot of excess calories and could cause weight gain. And if you're having these foods once in a while, they can also slow down your progress. So you want to try to avoid these ultra processed foods as often as possible. And limiting the consumption of these foods is an effective way to facilitate weight loss. In this study, there was 2 groups that were calorically, they were having similar intake. The foods that were provided calorically, they were the same, but one group had, limited processed foods and the other group had very processed foods. And the group that had, the participants that were in the group that was having less processed foods, they did not gain weight like the participants that were having the highly processed foods. So reducing them, and the way if a food is processed is by looking at the nutrition facts label, looking in the ingredients, and seeing if there's a lot of sodium and sugar and fats that are being added to the food. So that's a good way to, it's a good indicator to see what you're having. Dr. Lissabor, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think you've covered it just beautifully, actually, Sahar. Thank you. Now, there's one thing. A lot of food additives are sort of addictive, so they make you crave things more, and that's part of the processing. That's their goal, because they want to sell processed foods because that's how the company earns money. So it's planned. Like if you think about salt that's added to product, salt that's, think about the word soda and what it has in it, soda and sodium. If you believe it or not, soda that you taste as sweet has an element of salt in it, and that makes you thirstier. So it's all in marketing, and that's food science.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it does make these foods, more shelf stable, more readily available. But when we're trying to meet our goals of weight loss, we want to try to avoid these foods. Our goal is to have foods that are not highly processed, that kind of fulfill and sustain us, so that we're not becoming addicted to these foods and going back and constantly snacking. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, I have 2 jars of honey here. And last week, Maria was asking about organic raw honey versus traditional honey. So it is true that sometimes honeys have added sugars, or they're mixed with like agave, or there are honey hybrids, but these are 2 pure honey foods that you see here. And what I want to mention about this is, if you look at the nutrition facts, they are essentially identical as far as their nutrition facts go. So what's important to see here is, just because a food, and Dr. Lissagor put it so nicely is food labels in this way can be misleading because people often associate organic as being healthier, but often organic is more expensive and not measurably healthier. And in some cases, it's essentially the same like you see here. Or raw, individuals think raw honey is more beneficial than traditional honey, but you can see they may be processed differently, but the ingredients are the same and the nutrition facts are the same. So you don't have to go for the organic variety for foods like honey. It's the same, really. Dr. Lissagor, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
I think, again, you did a beautiful job with foods like honey. Sometimes raw honey, well, honey in general should never be fed to children under 2 years old because there are things that are not healthy about it. And we assume that honey is healthier than sugar, and it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So be careful about misleading labels. If words like natural and organic, organic is not misleading. It is organic, but organic doesn't always need to be associated with healthier. That's not what it indicates. Organic is just the way that the food was processed, and raw is also an indicator of how the food was processed. It doesn't say anything about the nutrition facts in the food.
Right. And one other thing to think about the word organic, there's so many different definitions of it. Certified organic means anybody can claim that their product is organic, but if it's actually organic, meaning no additives or preservatives or anything like that, then the food company would have to apply for special certification. So you just need to be aware. And it gets back to what Sahar has said, plant-based foods in their whole form, rather than more of the packaged foods.
Another thing I want to add about this added sugar discussion is that there are various names for sugar. It doesn't necessarily have to say the word sugar. There's corn syrup solids, crystal dextrose, evaporated cane juice, fructose sweetener, fruit juice concentrate. These are all different names for added sugar. So it's important to know when you see these foods listed in the ingredients list that this is what those added sugars, that's what's being indicated by the added sugars on the label. Okay, so we can go over to the next slide. So generally, Americans' diets are very high in sodium. So here's 2 peanut butter varieties that I found at the store. And what I wanted to point out here, these are nutritionally almost identical. However, the top food is salted and the bottom one is the unsalted version. And if I were to choose between these 2 foods, I would go for the unsalted version. Salt has the ability to, like Dr. Lissagor mentioned, to have people crave the food more and be more addicting. And salt is also linked to higher blood pressure, and which could lead to different cardiovascular problems that we don't really need to go into right now. But when there is an option for a lower salt food, and it's essentially identical to the version with salt, I would go for the unsalted version. And if we go on to the next slide, going back to our discussion we had at the first week. Oh, we went too far. Let's go back. Yeah, thank you. Going back to the discussion we had the first week about making lower calorie substitutions, this is a nice substitution to make for canola oil and canola oil spray. So I know it's kind of hard to read the label, but the canola oil for 1 tablespoon has 120 calories. The spray is a nice alternative. It says for a 1/3 second spray, it's 0 calories. So when you're trying to look for options to reduce calories, but still have, you know, I don't want to use the word flavor, but so we use oils and butters to cook. You can use canola oil spray almost the same as you use the oil and butter. Flavor is not going to be the same, but it's a great alternative. So there's also coconut oil spray. I've seen olive oil spray. If there is a flavor in the food that the spray adds, you can also always try these different sprays and see which one you enjoy the most. But this is a nice substitution to make. And lastly, what I wanted to show here is the extra lean ground beef. We skipped the slide, yeah. The extra lean ground beef versus just regular ground beef. You can see here, again, you're getting the same, serving size is the same in both of these foods. So serving size is for 4 ounces, but you are getting less than half the calories and far less fat in the extra lean ground beef. So we're getting the same portion size, the same amount of food, but with much fewer amounts of saturated fat, much fewer amounts of calories. And these types of swaps are the swaps that we want to make that'll help us more efficiently meet our goal. So, you know, we don't want to restrict the amount of food. We want to just make substitutions that will reduce the amount of calories and added sugars and fats and sodium in our foods, so that we can more efficiently meet our goals. Does that make sense for everyone? Yeah? Okay. Alrighty. Molly, did you have a food that you wanted to show us, a nutrition label that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I snuck out and got my whole wheat bread because my husband and I were having a discussion on it. Okay. And it's Bohemian hearth bread, and it's 100 calories. And so we were looking at the label then, and it had in carbohydrates, it had sugars. Like you were saying, the added sugar was 3 grams. So the total sugar was, carbohydrates was 20. Is there a brand of wheat bread that you found you recommend, or there's so many choices out there?
Yeah, there definitely are. I like the Dave's bread brand. I feel like it's the least processed. You can look into it, and least amounts of added sugar. Dr. Lescore, do you have a type of bread that you like or you would recommend?
When we go back to what you're so beautifully explaining, Sahar, if you look at the ingredients label on a package, not on the food label, but the list of ingredients, if the first 3, the smaller the list, the shorter the list of ingredients, the more nutrient dense the food product. So there's, look at Josh is the perfect example of the type of bread. But yes, so you want to look, is the first, yes, whole grains, perfect. You want to look to make sure that at least the first 3 items on the ingredients list are actual foods. Okay, so real foods, not the OSE and all of the processing ingredients. I personally like Oro wheat, whole wheat bread, but I just like the richness of the flavor. Plus, it's more filling.
Molly, what's your first 3 ingredients show?
Down here. Ooh. I need my magnifying glass.
Join
my old eyes here. Okay, first 3 ingredients are whole wheat flour, water, and wheat gluten.
That's great.
And sugar.
And the word gluten means protein. It's a type of a protein. So that's good.
Yeah.
It's a protein in a carbohydrate.
Oh, okay.
So when you said there's 100 calories, One thing I just wanted to point out is, yes, it says 100 calories, and then the next thing you want to look at is the serving size. So is it 100 calories per slice or per two
Yes.
slices?
One slice.
Yeah. So we want to look at the calories and what the reference is to the serving size. So that's important too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go to our homework this week, again, we really want to we really want to look out for deceiving food labels, and looking for food words like natural or whole grain, or these are a lot of it is marketing, and what's more important to look at is the ingredients list. So when you really want to compare two foods, don't just look at the front of the food that says natural or whole. You want to look at the back and see, like Dr. Lissagore said, what are the ingredients in that food, and what are the added sugars, and are there trans or saturated fats in the food? And that's a better determinant of whether it would be a good option or not. So more often we want to choose foods that are higher in dietary fiber. Whole grain foods are high in dietary fiber, so that's good. And vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. And we want to choose foods that are lower in saturated fats. More often do not have any trans fats, lower in sodium, and lower in added sugar. So those are the better option foods for us to choose. And like we said earlier, avoid the ultra processed foods, because those have a lot of additives that really can slow down our weight loss progress. And since we have a goal, we want to work towards that goal. We want to choose foods that help us more effectively reach our goal. So that's kind of what we have for today. Does anyone have any questions?
Just one more thing to remember, these words, plant-based foods in their whole form. And then when you're looking at that, it's less processed foods just because of that. So the majority of your dietary choices, plant-based foods in their whole form. So an apple versus the apple juice, or the orange versus the orange juice, that sort of thing. And what Sahar said, balance, variety, moderation, and we'll throw in, thinking of Dr. Loy and Josh and everybody else, balance, variety, moderation, and exercise.
Yes, absolutely. So I see your question, Kate. Oats, rolled versus steel cut. I believe rolled oats are almost like instant oats, right, Kate? Okay. Rolled oats are more, I think they're stripped of more of their nutrients and they cook faster. The steel cut oats take longer to cook, but I think it's the entire oat grain.
Okay.
I would go with the steel cut, and
Steel
best
cut?
way to prepare, yeah. I would if you have the time to prepare it, oats are really a great option. Both oats are great, rolled and steel cut. But if I had to make a choice of which one would be a better option, I would go with the steel cut.
Perfect. We'll do that.
It's the
We're looking for
entire grain. Yeah.
The entire grain. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
are you showing your foot? Oh, okay. For overnight oats. Perfect. And then in terms of all the different offenders that are on the nutrition label, what are some of the ones we should really be looking out for? I know you said added salt, added sugars, and all the different oats.
Trans fats, saturated fats. We want to have this few trans and saturated fats. Hopefully no trans fats, and as little saturated fats as you can.
And those are all the added oils, like the soy oil or the soybean oil or the canola oil, or
no, saturated fats are found. Saturated fats are found in foods that are animal products. If you look at the label of the two ground beefs that I had that were on the slide, for example, the saturated fat content in the extra lean ground beef was 2 grams of saturated fat. The saturated fat in the regular ground beef, which is 80% lean, is 9 grams. So I would choose the extra lean ground beef with 2 grams of saturated fat. That's a good indicator that that's a better option with the food that is, you know, has the same portion size but has fewer saturated fats, fewer added sugars, less amount of sodium is the better option.
Perfect. And like in terms of healthy fats, like an avocado, would that be unsaturated fats?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mono.
Fats found
Perfect.
in fruits and vegetables are unsaturated, right? Or
Yeah.
monounsaturated, I believe. Yeah.
In an avocado, it's monounsaturated fatty acids, which tend to be healthier. And yeah, people think that all fats are bad, and that's not true. We need to have them in our system.
Yeah.
So
Fats are essential building blocks for many vitamins, and it's essential for healthy cell function and, you know, building healthy cholesterol for our cell walls. So fats are not bad. We just want to know which types of fats we should be having.
the saturated fats increase, too much of it increases risk for cardiovascular disease. But we need to have, and it's hard to cut that out entirely. You can't, so you shouldn't really worry about that. Again, focus on the whole foods, the natural, and I don't want to say organic. I just want to say on whole foods, real foods.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your questions, Kate. These are great questions.
We're trying to make just more informed choices for this little one.
Absolutely. She will model what you model. So if
she already, yes, she wants whatever I'm having. If, you know, I put on her plate, she doesn't want it, but she wants, that's why I can get her to eat salad if she'll eat it out of my plate.
absolutely.
I know, we did it this morning with breakfast too.
Yeah, and that's great. She knows what she wants.
Yeah.
So our
Mind
kids
too that your saturated fats are typically the ones that are solid at room temperature.
Okay.
yes, it is
Got
true.
it. So like your butters. They are.
Yes, but again, that's moderation. So if you go just for a little bit, you're good.
Yeah.
Also, really great avocado toast. Yum.
So good.
That's my favorite.
Just depends how thick you make it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You mean you don't have it that big?
Taller than the bread.
You want some toast with your avocado?
Exactly, Josh. Exactly. Wow, Sahar, great job.
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you guys.
Yay,
thank you for your time. I love presenting these, and I love, you know, researching and finding information to share. It's been amazing. I start my internship boot camp next week, so when I figure out when I'm more familiar with my schedule, then we can schedule more of these and catch up. And I'd love to keep meeting with you guys and sharing my knowledge and learning more and being a part of this. This has been such an honor. Thank you.
Well, you're so
Thank you,
generous
Sahar.
with your expertise and
Sahar.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Terry.
Thank
I think
you so
what
much.
we will do too as time goes on is that as our students get more familiar with their participants, as questions start to come, if it's okay, we'll just shoot you the questions via email.
I would love that. I would love that. I would love, you know, knowing what everyone wants more information about and giving me the chance to find, you know, to help and just be a part of it. So for sure, keep me in the loop, and I will email you once I know what my schedule is looking like, and we can set more of these up and answer everyone's questions. I love being able to connect with all the participants. Thank you guys so much. Were there any other questions before we hang up? No. You all have my email. Really, thank you for the opportunity. I've learned so much, and we will do this again for sure.
Look on the internship.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to finally get it going. It'll be great. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for your time, and we will connect soon. And send me emails, please. I love knowing what the questions are so I can look into it. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sahar.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.